السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. ثم أما بعد. Yesterday we talked about the life of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the life of Al-Bukhari. I still just need some time to wake up. And today we'll be talking very briefly about the life of Imam Muslim the Hajjaj radiyallahu anhu wa arda, known as Imam Muslim. And Imam Muslim, as we mentioned briefly yesterday, he was one of the students of Imam al-Bukhari. Both Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim, they have again their own methodology of writing the hadith. Imam Bukhari wrote many books, similarly Imam Muslim, but what is very famous and well known, established and printed and available is Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim al-Jami' al-Kabir, al-Jami' al-Sahih, al-Jami' al-Sahih. Interestingly, Imam Muslim did not write in his Sahih narrations from Imam Bukhari. This is for a simple reason that he completed his book after meeting with Imam al-Bukhari. So Imam Muslim, when he wrote his book, was very well received, and he was on the top of the world, and then he met Imam al-Bukhari, and despite the fact that his book was very well received and recognized, he used to deal with Imam Bukhari as his teacher. And some actually said that we saw the Muslim sitting, humbly and asking Imam Bukhari like a young student asking his big sheikh. And as we mentioned also briefly yesterday, that Imam Bukhari went through. Then now this idea of reading Quran while the lecture is going on, I don't understand it. But we'll do this later.
We'll fix it tomorrow, inshallah.
Yeah, we'll do this later on. Because we have the 24 hours for reading Quran, right? So anyways, so Imam Bukhari went through some trials from two people, as we mentioned, Muhammad ibn Yahya al-Hudhali, who was the teacher of Imam Bukhari, but when Imam Bukhari became so famous, he was so envious of him. And the second one is the leader or the governor of Bukhara itself, and Imam Bukhari actually was kicked out of these two cities, Bukhara, his hometown, and also Samarkand, and then eventually he died in a city nearby Naysabur. Imam Muslim actually stood with him, and he did not leave him like so many other scholars and people left Imam Bukhari because of this fitna. But Imam Muslim stayed with him and never abandoned him. And when he meets with him, he used to kiss between his eyes, and he says, if you can, please allow me to kiss your feet, because you are the teacher of all teachers, the master of all masters when it comes to hadith. This is how much he loved and respected Imam al-Bukhari. For the Sunni Muslims, Imam Muslim or Sahih Muslim is the second authentic book right after Imam Bukhari's book. Samarkand and then Naysabur. These are the two cities. Samarkand, Imam Bukhari was in Samarkand, and Imam Muslim was in Naysabur, which is in Iran today. Samarkand or Bukhara is in Uzbekistan. Today, Naysabur is an Iranian city. He started searching for hadith and writing the hadith when he was 12. Now look at 12 years old kids in our time, and it doesn't look like a beginning of a scholar. But Imam Muslim, when he was 12 years old, he started his journey, and he spent most of his life traveling, like Imam Bukhari. They traveled everywhere to meet people. At that time, there's no other means of communication. And for them, the scholars of hadith, to meet a person is different from hearing about him. Big difference. When you hear someone says, this sheikh says he heard this sheikh, is different from going to this sheikh in particular and talk to him and ask him, where did you hear this, at what time, when did you meet him, and so on and so forth. So, so the isnad is stronger now. So he started this journey, traveling to, of course, to Iraq, Basra, Kufa, and Baghdad, and then Damascus, and of course Mecca, and Medina, and Egypt, and Yemen, traveling to collect the hadith, to meet people, to investigate about the hadith. He started this when he was 14, and to write his book, he spent 15 years. Just a quick comparison. Imam Bukhari collected his book in 16 years, right? And Imam Muslim collected his Sahih in 15 years. Traveling, writing, but he did most of the work in Naysabur. He was born in Naysabur, died in Naysabur, and he wrote most of his books in this place. But he traveled a lot. Basra, Kufa, Mecca, and Medina. He met with other Imams like Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, Abi Zar'a al-Razi, and many others.
What's the time frame for this?
He actually is born in 206 Hijri and died in 261, I think. So he lived 55 years. 55 years, only 55 years, and he accomplished all these accomplishments. He died, by the way, in the 25th of Rajab, 5 days before Sha'ban, in 261. Imam Bukhari died in 256. So he lived about 60 years after Imam al-Bukhari. Al-Imam Muslim also is known as a person who came from a wealthy family. His father was a scholar as well, and he was a businessman also. He does business with silk and clothes and so on. So he was known as a person who dresses very well. He's handsome, he's kind of tall, has a white hair and beard, but he always looks sharp, and he has a amama, and the amama goes between his shoulders, and he looks very handsome, very good, very neat, rahimahullah. And he used to actually do hadith. People come and take hadith from him in his store. Big market, and has his own store, and he sits in the store and people come and ask him hadith, and he would give them hadith while doing his business in his store. And he also had a lot of properties, a lot of lands and farms and so on. But he also was very generous. He was known as a very generous person. Imam al-Dhahabi, who wrote about Al-A'lam, he called him Muhsin Nisabur. He's the Muhsin of this city. Every city has some people who are known as Muhsinin. They like to give and give sadaqah and help people. So he was known as Muhsin Nisabur. In his life, he did not backbite anybody or curse anyone or beat anybody. He was a very polite, very calm person. Dedicated his entire life for Al-Hadith. He is definitely one of the Imams of Al-Hadith, at least for Ahl Sunnah. Of course, Shi'as, they have their own chain of narration. For Shi'as, the chain of narration must come from Ahlul Bayt, because these are the trustworthy people, infallible people. So, but for us as Ahl Sunnah, we have all these books of Hadith we talked about yesterday. Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, Ibn Majah, Nasa'i, and Tirmidhi, which we'll talk about them inshallah. Keep in mind, traveling at that time, to cover all this distance was not as easy as it is today. You prepare your camel and then you go, could be very windy, very cold, rainy. Traveling was not easy. It takes a lot of determination for people. Traveling was tough, was difficult. Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, it was narrated that she said that people used to say that traveling is a piece of punishment. قطعة من العذاب, piece of punishment. And she said, I would say that I say punishment is part of traveling. Traveling was difficult. The restrictions for ladies, obviously. You don't have all these facilities, cars and rest areas and bathrooms, and you may run out of water. You may encounter way robbers, animals, heat, sandy winds, all these kind of troubles. If you get, God forbid, sick, and you are sitting on a camel, right, or a horse, it's not very comfortable. It takes a lot of determination and good health for people to go and to do that. It's very risky sometimes.
Did they travel in groups, or is it always by?
Well, it depends. People usually travel for Hajj in groups, because if you are from Baghdad, you go with a group. But if you're going, this private business is going for his own job. Maybe he has some company, maybe Allah Alam. But even though if you have 2 or 3 people traveling with you, it's not that, it makes it a little easier, but still a tough job. And takes a lot of money, and he spends so much money, you can imagine. He used his money to seek knowledge. Sometimes it goes the other way around. People learn knowledge to make money. And you can see that these people are not making this to get a position in a university or to make money. From the very beginning, their childhood, until they die, they are collecting hadith. Imam Muslim died while searching for hadith. They said the way he died, he was in a study circles, and he was asked about a particular hadith, and he did not know about this hadith. So he had to go home that night to search for this hadith. He has, of course, come in piles of books and writings about hundreds of thousands of hadith. And he kept searching and searching and searching. And some actually said that someone brought him a big plate of date. And he told his people, nobody is allowed to enter this room. Don't let anybody come. So they gave him this plate of date, and he put it, and he was searching and eating, searching the whole night. By the time the Fajr comes in, he found the hadith and he died. So to the last second of his life, he was searching for the hadith, serving the Sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Maybe you don't realize Imam Muslim so much, maybe student of knowledge who go to study fiqh, but in your life, the way you make wudu, the way you do so many things, it is because of the effort of these great Imams. Because as we know, the Sunnah gives so much details about what briefly mentioned in the Quran, so it all comes from these books of hadith. So they have a direct effect on what we do in our daily basis, whether we know this or not. From the very beginning to the very end, spending money to travel. There's no institution that gives them money, scholarship. They used to spend money from their own pocket to travel to collect the hadith, put it in books of Sahih. He benefited tremendously from Imam Bukhari, as we mentioned, and he said that to Imam Bukhari. He said that, Wallahi la yubghiduka illa hasid. Nobody hates you. Imam Muslim saying to Imam Bukhari, nobody hates you except an envious person. Wa ashhadu, I bear witness that there is no one like you in this world. No one like you, Imam al-Bukhari. Imam Muslim saying this now, Imam Bukhari. He benefited tremendously from Imam Bukhari. Imam al-Daraqutni, one of the great Imams of Hadith, also said if it was not al-Bukhari, La raha Muslim wala ja. Muslim could not go or come anywhere. In other words, it was Imam Bukhari who made Muslim something, because he benefited tremendously from him. He is a person of ibadah and akhlaq and adab and generosity. And scholars said so many things about him. Imam Ibn Salah is the one who also very famous with his Muqaddimah Ibn Salah, the introduction in the Usul and Hadith. He said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed Imam Muslim in the highest place of honor and knowledge, in the place of stars. And he became Imam and Hujjah. People, when they talk about Hadith, his name must be mentioned. And ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. This is the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives to whoever He wants. A person with the name is Bindar, one of the scholars, he said, Al-Huffaz Arba'a. The Huffaz, when you say Hafid, like I mentioned yesterday, the word Hafid, and that this culture would say Al-Hafid means Hafiz hundreds of thousands of hadith. Now, the word Hafiz goes to the one who memorizes the Quran. Quran memorization at that time, as I said, it was normal, so it's not a big deal. So, my son is Hafiz, so what? No. Many people have. So he said, Al-Huffaz are four. Abu Zara, Al-Hatim, Abu Hatim, and Abu Zara, Muhammad ibn Ismail. Who is Muhammad ibn Ismail? Muhammad ibn Ismail. Who is Muhammad ibn Ismail? Al-Bukhari, right? Al-Darimi and Imam Muslim. Imam Ibn Hajar. Ibn Hajar is the one who wrote the most famous interpretation or comment on Imam Bukhari. So Imam Bukhari, many scholars wrote tafsir or ta'liq Imam Bukhari, right? The most famous book is Fath al-Bari fi Sharh Sahih al-Bukhari. Fath al-Bari. Fath, opening of al-Bari. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-Bari. So, Fath al-Bari, Sharh Sahih al-Bukhari. He comments on every hadith, right? The Sharh, tafsir, yani. And Imam Muslim also, many scholars wrote tafsir, or Imam Muslim's book, Sahih Muslim. And the most famous one is Imam al-Nawawi's Sharh Sahih Muslim. Imam al-Nawawi, we all know Imam al-Nawawi is a great Shafi'i scholar who wrote Riyadh al-Salihin, this book, the very famous book of collection of hadith, Riyadh al-Salihin. And he is one of the great Shafi'i scholars who wrote about Imam al-Shafi'i's fiqh. And he wrote Sharh Sahih Muslim, Imam al-Nawawi. His name is Yahya ibn Sharaf al-Din al-Nawawi. This Nawawi also is a great scholar. He died in the age of 44. 42 or 44, I'm not sure. Only 42 years old, and he wrote all this. So Imam al-Nawawi, who wrote the Sharh of Sahih Muslim, he said, أحد علام أئمة هذا الشأن. He is the one of the a'lam, the great famous scholars of this business of hadith. And وأهل الحفظ والإتقان. He has amazing sharp memory and accurate writing. And he is one of those who travel a lot to seek knowledge. And he is well recognized among all scholars. All scholars, all madhahib. They quote Imam Bukhari and they also quote an Imam Muslim. He wrote so many books. And unfortunately, like Imam Bukhari, most of his books are not found anywhere. Does this mean it is totally destroyed, or what happened to these great books written by Imam Bukhari? Sometimes this happened intentionally. People destroy their books, like what happened to Ibn Hazm and Ibn Rushd. They burned their books because they consider them fasiq and so go and burn books. So these books never printed or given the chance to be copied and published. And some other cases, these books, what happened is that Imam Bukhari, for example, writes his Sahih or write another book, and he actually teach this book to some students. So the students will come and write down what the Shaykh says, and then they publish their own copies. So you have one original copy, and then you have multiple copies written by the students. Like Imam Malik, for example, wrote Al-Muwatta, and they've got different copies of Al-Muwatta, and they're not identical like today. Today, if you write a book, one publisher can produce 1 million copies. Every copy is identical to other copy, right? That was not the case back then. There's no printer that can just produce any number of copies. So the Imam would teach his book, and the students would write. So we have like 10, 15, 20 different copies. They are not identical. Usually, the most authentic and accurate one is the copy of this student. And this becomes the most famous version of this book, right? So what happened with this book, sometimes nobody wrote it. Or we have like 5, 10 copies, but they're all either destroyed because of wars, libraries are burned, or because these manuscripts, they call them manuscripts. You may have number of manuscripts of the same book. And what Muslim scholars, modern Muslim scholars do, they try to collect these manuscripts. And they may find one copy in Spain, another copy in the Netherlands, another copy in Istanbul. They travel and they collect them and they compare these copies and they publish one book out of these three. They put them together and they, in the footnote, they say, okay, this copy A, B, C, this in copy A, it says this, copy B, it says that. That's called tahqiq. مخطوطات. تحقيق المخطوطات. So it could be very much that in Netherlands, in England, in France, in Belgium, in Stockholm, there are tons of libraries and universities when they have hundreds of thousands of these manuscripts, our manuscripts, sitting there, doing nothing, just waiting for someone to have the courage, the time, the energy, the determination to go and find these manuscripts and publish them. In Leiden, Netherlands, one of our teachers actually went there himself, underground. And they took him, because he's a professor and so on. So they took him, and the temperature and the humidity level has to be very well managed to maintain, preserve all these very old manuscripts. And he showed them tons, he said mountains of manuscripts, books written by these students or by the shuyukh themselves. But it is buried in these libraries. In Birmingham University, England, a few years ago, they found the oldest manuscript of the Quran. And scholars then, they tried to, they can determine what age this manuscript was made, and they said this most likely in the 7th century, the time of the Prophet himself, or soon after his death, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are tons of these manuscripts, books, copies of the Quran, of the Hadith, of the Prophet, are taken by these European countries because they can't invade it, Iraq and Baghdad and Egypt, and they went to Azhar University and they took tons. Napoleon, actually, when he came to Egypt, he took many of these manuscripts, not only in religion, by the way. Many of them were manuscripts in engineering, agriculture, astronomy, chemistry, and so on and so forth. This is our treasure, scattered in all these libraries, waiting for someone sometime. And that's why many of these PhD and master students, they go and find manuscripts and they try to find many, at least 3. This gives value to the research. And then they edit these manuscripts and they write it down and they write comments with them and then they publish. Hundreds of thousands of these manuscripts are there. In addition to the books lost in the time of the Mongols, when the Mongols came and invaded Iraq, Baghdad in particular, they burned all these books. Millions of books being lost by these great imams. It's a great shame that this ummah and no government are fighting to get these manuscripts back. They're written in Old Arabic, readable, many of them are in good shape. They just need students of knowledge to sit down and write them and comment them and compare them with other manuscripts and they publish it. Right? Sahih al-Bukhari was too famous, so it went everywhere in the life of Imam Bukhari and similar to Sahih Muslim, so it's very difficult to lose all these copies. So we're fortunate to have these copies, but unfortunately many of the books written by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim were lost. Imam Muslim, as I mentioned, he died in the year 261 after filling the world with knowledge. And he wrote his book, Sahih Muslim, out of 300,000. Imam Bukhari, out of 600,000. He wrote Sahih Muslim, 4,000. And Sahih Muslim, the same thing, but out of 300,000, he wrote his Sahih, because not every Sahih he added. He has to be super accurate and meet all the criteria that he has to, in order to include this hadith in his book. I will stop here, inshallah, and if you have any comments or questions. Yes?
Yesterday I was talking to you regarding, during the Khilafat of Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar and Usman, Quran was compiled.
Yes.
And what we are seeing Quran is today why they have not done similar type of work for hadith to preserve all the hadith?
Well, that's a very good question. Why the hadith was not written in the time of the Prophet or the time of the Khulafa al-Rashideen? That makes a lot of sense, but I think, wallah, there are a number of reasons. One of them is that Arabs are not known as people who write things. Even the Quran itself was not written in full in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So few people can write and read. And these few, they wrote some ayat, they memorized the surah and then they go and write it down. So the entire Quran was not compiled in the time of the Prophet, not even in the time of Abu Bakr. Until Umar convinced Abu Bakr. So Abu Bakr did not like the idea, in fact. So why? Why putting the Quran in? Muslims memorize it. Allah says, بَلْ هُوَ آيَاتٌ بَيِّنَاتٌ فِي صُدُورِ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمِ. Right? فِي صُدُورِ الَّذِينَ, in the heart of the people of knowledge. So Quran is memorized by the heart. So Umar said, now, but now many people die, the Huffaz, and it would be a good idea to put it in one book, so just to make sure that we don't lose any. Oh, why not like that idea? I said, why would we do something that the Prophet did not told us to do? If it was a good idea, then the Prophet would have told us to do it. And Umar and other Sahaba, they kept asking Abu Bakr, yes, people die. So just to preserve the Quran, there's nothing wrong in the Quran. For Abu Bakr, that was like a bid'ah. Whatever the Prophet says, follow. That's what Abu Bakr. The Prophet did not say about it. Because the Prophet did not say it, and Umar said, well, it's khayr, it's good. Would this hurt if we put the Quran? No. So, but it may save some ayat. So eventually Abu Bakr liked the idea. Of course, this enthusiasm was much less when it comes to the hadith of the Prophet. Why? Because the Prophet, the Sunnah is walking Sunnah. They see the Sunnah, everything the Prophet does when he sneezes. And it says, Alhamdulillah, that's a Sunnah, right? So they see this. And they tell their people, everybody goes back to his wife and kids, to where the Prophet said this, the Prophet did that. Let's do it the way the Prophet is doing it. This is a practical Sunnah. Sunnah Amaliyah, they call it, right? So there's no need to, you see the Prophet ﷺ drinking with his right hand or cutting a piece of meat with a knife, and then you go, and that day I saw the Prophet cutting a piece of meat with a knife. Or eating this particular. You don't have. Number two, keep in mind also that they were extremely busy with jihad and building the state and defending themselves. So, do you know how many of the Sahaba did have of the entire Quran? How many, roughly, among the Sahaba memorized the entire Quran? 22, 26, 28, less than 30. Definitely less than 100 of the Sahaba. Good Jama'ah. Jama'ah Quran means that the entire Quran is his heart. Very few. We know Ubay ibn Ka'b, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, of course, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Uthman ibn Affan. Few, we can name them. So they're not people who go and write down and make like library as the system now we have. This is Quran, this is Hadith, this is interpretation, this is fatwa. They don't have the time, and it's not part of their culture. In addition to this, Rasulullah prohibited the Sahaba from writing. You may be surprised to know that. He said in a very famous hadith, "Man kataba anni shay'an falyamhu." If you wrote anything about me, go and erase it.
What is that?
حدثوا عني means to go and tell people Rasulullah said this and Rasulullah did that, but don't write something down. Why is that? It's a good question. Why is that? Because this was the time when the Quran comes fresh almost every day. And many ulama said the reason was that the Prophet did not want anything to be added to the Quran. Just keep the Quran. The Quran has more than enough. Okay? And then do what I do. Pray as you see me praying. Right? When I tell you what something, go ahead and do it. And when the Sahaba do it, then it becomes Sunnah. That's why Imam Malik, in his madhab, said that what the people of Medina, the custom of the people of Medina, is a source of the Sharia. If I don't find something in the Quran or the Sunnah, then I go with the custom of the people of Medina. Because the people of Medina, their custom is not coming from nowhere, it's coming from the generation before them. And they took it from the Sahaba, and then they took it from the Prophet. Right? So how many times they saw the Prophet praying in Medina? 10 years. He lived them in prayer almost every day. Unless he's traveling or out for jihad or something. So they saw him praying. They pray nafil, he prays farad, he read the Quran. So they don't have the time or the energy, and the Prophet told them this: I want the Quran to be separate. I don't want anybody to, because you may add something to the Quran from the saying of the Prophet. So that's why I said, that's why I have the Quran. Don't write anything. If you wrote anything, erase it. So, how do we know about the adhan? How do we know about the 5 daily prayers? How do we know about how to pray? Is it because Hadith and Bukhari Muslim? No. Because we inherited this from the Sahaba and from the Tabi'een and the one generation. It's well established. Who among us learned how to pray by reading books? None of us, right? We start praying, following our parents, our community. We pray like people do pray, right? And how did we know about this? Our parents. And how did our parents know about this? Their parents. And so on. It goes all the way to the Sahaba. So when the Prophet ﷺ does something repeatedly, then it came to us, not through a single hadith or 2 hadith, no, but with the practice of the entire Muslim Ummah. Muslims travel all the time, and wherever they settle somewhere, they pray Jum'ah, right? All these masajid, including our masjid, it came from the idea that we have to pray together. We have to do Jum'ah. There are some ibadat you can do alone, but we have to do some ibadat collectively, together, right? So Muslims don't doubt that we have to pray Jum'ah together, right? That's why masajid is increasing. Some states you have only few masajid, and there's huge space, but small, because Muslims are, but soon Muslims will travel there, and then the first thing they do, they find a place to pray in. Why? Because we believe praying Jum'ah is farad. Not because we read Sahih Bukhari when we found out. No. Everybody, all Muslims know that. Even most of them are not practicing Islam very well. When they come together, a few families, they find a place and they try to do Jum'ah. And then this masjid becomes a bigger masjid, and so on and so forth. So what I want to say here is, the Prophet saying, don't try it. And then in the time of Abu Bakr, as I said, the idea of compiling the Quran came, and then Abu Bakr did it. Then in the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, many things happened. The same notion, when Umar found out, Umar al-Khattab, found out that it may be a good idea to compile the Quran because we may lose some of the Quran, and Abu Bakr did it, and Uthman did it actually more. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz noticed also many things happened. One, the big fitna happened between Ali and Muawiyah. That is still affecting us as Muslims today. What happened, we have no new branch, new sects emerging. You have Shias, and then you have Kharijites, and they have the majority of Muslims, right? And so many wars, and killing, and rage, and anger, and hate between tribes, and sects, and so on happened. The Umayyads caused a lot of troubles, and fitness also. And everybody started doing what? Fabricating hadith. Our group is better than your group. You know, and the Prophet cursed your tribe. The Prophet praised our tribe. The Prophet said this about Ali. Oh no, he said this about Muawiyah. He said this about... And now people get lost. So Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, in his time, he found out that it is time now to exert some effort to compile the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, because of all these political events and fighting and so on, and also many mushrikeen became Muslims, but their Islam is not strong. Many among the people of the book, they joined Islam because Islam is strong, but they're not like hypocrites. And many people start fabricating a hadith. And some also fabricate a hadith for perhaps different reasons, like this story of, I mentioned before, Imam Yahya ibn Ma'in and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, they are friends, ulama al-hadith. And they were traveling, as usual, seeking hadith, and they entered one mosque one day, and after salah, someone gave a bayan. And what was the bayan? He said, I will tell you this hadith about the virtue of each surah. Al-Fatiha, Al-Baqarah, Al-Imran, Nisa, Al-Ma'idah. We know now the virtue of Surah Yasin and Surah Al-Kahf, reading Surah Al-Kahf in Jum'ah, there's Ayat Al-Kursi, has some virtues, and so on. So he actually came up with this hadith that he made about Al-Baqarah, the virtues of Surah Al-Baqarah, Al-Imran. Every surah he gave some virtues. And he said, narrated Yahya ibn Ma'in and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the Prophet said about Surah Al-Baqarah this, about Al-Imran this. And Yahya ibn Hanbal and are sitting there. He does not know them. So when he was done, they came to him and said, where did you get this hadith from? He said, this is narrated by Ahmad ibn Hanbal. I said, this is Ahmad ibn Hanbal and this is Yahya. I've never heard about this hadith before. He said, well, don't you think this Ahmad ibn Hanbal other than you? Anyways, so when they told him why you're doing that, he said, because I see people going to hadith and leaving the Quran, so I want to bring people back to the Quran. Maybe good intention, but horrible tactic, right? To fabricate hadith, so the Prophet said this, it's a horrible idea. So, in the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he noticed that now, because of his fabrication, and also because many people who know the Sunnah of the Prophet are dying, we are now about 200 years after the Prophet, and all these things happen. What will happen? Another 500 years after this. No? So he said, now it's time. So he sent to one of his, the ruler of Medina, Abu Bakr ibn Hazm, and also the other narration, Imam Sufi also mentioned that he talked to Imam al-Zuhri. Imam al-Zuhri, all Orientalists, Western people want to attack Islam, they attack al-Zuhri, Imam al-Zuhri. Maybe we need to talk about Imam al-Zuhri. Because Imam al-Zuhri in his time, he was the first one to start this business of bringing hadith and authenticating them and writing the chain of narration. So attacking Imam Zuhri is attacking the idea of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And whether these hadith are authentic or fabricated or made up by the Umayyads to establish their political authority and to ignore the Shia hadith, and so all these, I don't want to get into all these misconceptions and discussion about scholars, but perhaps this may answer your question, why the writing of the hadith did not start earlier. Yes?
Tartib of the Quran, that was said by Prophet ﷺ himself, or was it afterwards?
Two opinions. Imam Suyuti in his famous book, Al-Itqan fi Ulum al-Quran, he said that there are some masahif, Mus'haf ibn Mas'ud and Ubay ibn Ka'b and other masahif, that written based on the order of revelation. So the question is this order, Baqarah, Al-Imran, Nisa, Al-Ma'idah, all from Al-Fatiha to An-Nas, is this order of the surahs made by Allah and by Jibreel alayhi salam who told the Prophet and the Prophet told the Sahaba, or not? Two opinions. And Allahu A'lam, it is the opinion of the Sahaba and the time of Uthman when they collected the Quran, they wrote it this way, it's not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they put it according to the size of the surah. So the first 7 surahs are known as As-Sab' al-Tuwa, the longest surahs. Right? The first 7 are the longest. And then Al-Mi'in, those have 100 plus, right? And then Al-Mufassal, and then Qisar al-Surah. So based on the length of the surahs. Right? But the order of the ayat inside the surah, Surah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's differently. That's why the ulama said you cannot read the end of Surah Al-Baqarah in the first rak'ah, and then you read the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah in the second rak'ah. That's not tankis, they call it tankis. But what can you read Surah Al-Imran in the first rak'ah, and then the second rak'ah, read from Surah Al-Baqarah? They said it's better not to, but it's okay. It's not. Do you understand? So in the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, I think it was Abdullah ibn Abbas, who was praying with the Prophet ﷺ Qiyamul Layl. So he prayed Surah Al-Baqarah, and then Surah Al-Nisa, and then Surah Al-Imran, in this order. Some ulama, especially Hanafi, they said this is only nafil. You can do in nafil, but in fard you cannot do that. And I don't know. I mean, the Prophet did it once. Khalas, yani. But the point I want to make is that the order of the ayat in one surah is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And keep in mind, not every surah was revealed all at once. Like Surah Al-Baqarah, we have 10 ayat revealed, another 20. And the Prophet would tell them, oh, put this 5 ayat between this and between that. Then they, Sahaba, those who read the Quran, some of them do, and then they put it in this particular place. And amazingly, it fits perfectly. So we cannot switch the ayat within the surah. So Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Malik Yawm Al-Din, this order, nobody can mess with it. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, called tawqifi. But the ayat, the order of the surahs, most likely it's not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So this order was set and given by Prophet at the time?
Of the ayat or the surah? Of the ayat within the surah?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was written or no?
It was written, but it's not written in one place. So you write Surah Al-Baqarah and half Al-Imran. I write Surah Ghafir Fussilat. And he has Surah Al-Mulk and it was written, but not in one book.
Right.
Okay? So at the time of Abu Bakr, they put it in one book that we call it what? They didn't know a name. So what do you call this book now? Alright? And they call it Al-Mushaf. Because the Suhuf, Sahifa, page, every page called Sahifa. Suhuf, Suhuf Ibrahim. Suhuf means the page, the written thing. So they call it Mushaf. Right? So they call it Mushaf. But the order, I think there was ijma', almost ijma' among the Sahaba. This is the order that we would follow.
Excuse me, one of the authentic hadith about reading Surah Kahf on Friday, we know it's an authentic hadith. So what is the reason for that? Is it explained anywhere, like why we have to read it on Friday?
Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to repeat some ayat and some surahs more than others. Like for example, in Yawm al-Jum'ah, he used to recite Surah Qaf. And he also there are many other narrations that he used to recite Surah Al-Munafiqun in the first rak'ah, and Surah Al-Jum'ah in the first rak'ah, and Surah Al-Munafiqun in the second rak'ah. And he also in Eid and in Jum'ahs he used to recite in the Salat, Sabbih Isma Rabbika Al-A'la and Hal Ataka Hadithul Ghashiyah. Fajr of Jum'ah he used to recite in the first rak'ah Surah Alif Lam Mim As-Sajda, and the second rak'ah Hal Ata Al-Insani Hinu Min Ad-Dahri. So he, you know, why is that? We can try to find out an answer, but
maybe because of the stories that have been.
You can say that. You can say that because Surah Al-Kahf is addressing a number of issues, and as some, I think, to Sayyid Qutb rahimahullah, who said that Surah Al-Kahf, the bottom line, in Surah Al-Kahf, in all these stories, what's common is that this surah talks about the real values versus the false values. What gives real value? The people of the cave, they chose the biggest value is our iman, our faith, even if you have to live in a cave. The second story of the people of the man of the two gardens, you know, the real value is not the garden and wealth and money, it's a union, and so on. Dhul Qarnayn. So if you look at all what the thread that you can find in all these stories is that it focuses on the real value is the value of iman. وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا كَمَاءٍ أَنزَلْنَاهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ فَاخْتَلَطَ بِهِ نَبَاتُ الْأَرْضِ فَأَصْبَحَ هَشِيمًا تَذْرُوهُ الرِّيَاحُ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ مُقْتَدِرًا الْمَالُ وَالْبَنُونَ زِينَةُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيا وَالْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتُ خَيْرٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ ثَوَابًا وَخَيرًا. That's it. Allah could be. So, but the Prophet didn't say why, but he reminds us. It's a reminder. Like we read Al-Fatiha in every salah. Why? The thing that we repeat more has some value in it. It's our job now to find why we read Al-Fatiha every day. There must be a reason. Very few people think about this.
Quick question regarding that, Sheikh. The first 10 ayah and the last 10 ayah, Prophet ﷺ said will protect us from the Dajjal.
This is one of the hadith that if a Dajjal comes and you know this ayat, you'll be protected from him.
So,
But this does not answer why reading it every Friday.
my question is, so after I read the first 10, and then when I read the next 10, should I go to say Bismillah again or A'udhu Billah to continue? Or?
You say Bismillah only in the beginning of the surah.
So
Only when you begin a surah. So finish قل أعوذ برب الناس أو قل أعوذ برب الفلق أو شر حاسد إذا حسد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس. But if you start reading from the middle of the surah, you don't do the basmala. Say استعاذ أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الصفا والمروة من شعائر الله فمن حج البيت. So
if I need to read 10 and 10, I do
basmala in the beginning only.
A'udhu Billah and then A'udhu Billah in the last 10.
You don't have to say أعوذ بالله twice. أعوذ بالله one is enough.
You said that Imam Bukhari and Imam, they collected 600,000 and he collected 300,000.
No. Yeah. This is everything. Yes.
But they have 4,000, about 4,000 of these, but they don't match.
Sometimes the hadith are mentioned here and there. The same hadith.
Same hadith.
Yeah. And that's called muttafaqun alayh. Which when you read a book and they say hadith, quote hadith, and they write after the hadith, sometimes it's not Rawahu al-Bukhari, narrated by Bukhari. Sometimes Rawahu Muslim, or Rawahu at-Tirmidhi. And sometimes they write muttafaqun alayh, agreed upon. What does this agreed upon mean? It means al-Bukhari and Muslim, they both. So this is the highest. When al-Bukhari and Muslim, they agree on one hadith, that's the best. And number 2 is al-Bukhari, and number 3 is Muslim. When it comes to authenticity, if this hadith muttafaq alayh, that's number 1.
So what was Imam Muslim's guideline for him selecting?
Almost very close from Imam Bukhari. Okay, the authenticity and the trustworthiness of everyone and the connectivity of this chain of narration and his own satisfaction, because sometimes you have to make your own judgment. So by meeting people and reading about the biography and so on and so forth, then he feels comfortable that this hadith is for him, almost is no doubt. The Prophet said that.
Did he use Imam Bukhari's book of Tariq to...
No, he came to know Imam Bukhari when he was done with his book.
Oh.
That's why he did not take so much from Imam Bukhari.
What was the role of Zayd ibn Thabit in the compilation of the Quran?
Zayd ibn Thabit was the head or the chairman of the committee that's said by Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu or Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, because he's from Quraysh, he was young, he's sharp, and he said to them that if you have any disagreement, then the qira'ah of Quraysh, the language of Quraysh, prevails. Because this is the language that much well established and famous. Quraysh is Quraysh, everybody recognized Quraysh, for the two of them. So they asked Zayd ibn Thabit to be the head of the committee in the time of Abu Bakr. And he was the head of the committee also in the time of Uthman. So Zayd ibn Thabit did a wonderful job. And when they asked him to be the head of this committee, he said, if they asked me to remove this mountain to another place, it would have been easier for me to take this responsibility of writing every word of the Quran in one book. But he did a wonderful job, and the entire Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they agreed upon this, so there's no doubt.
Was he a Mufassir?
Of course.
The Jama'at, the whole team?
Yeah, they made a committee. I think this committee, there was Ubay ibn Ka'b and Zayd ibn Thabit and Uthman ibn Affan and Ali ibn Abi Talib and a number of the Sahaba who memorized the Quran. So they imagine if, God forbid now, in IAGD here, there's no copy of the Quran. What would we do? We'll get the best hafad of the community and we sit down and start writing, right? If I miss something, maybe Hafiz Rabbani will correct me, or maybe he forgets something, I remind him, and so on. And we have, mashallah, in hafad. So we can write another Quran. Inshallah, to be accurate, I hope. Right? So, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك والعصر ان الانسان لفي خسر الا الذين امنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحان ربك رب العزه عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.